In this movie, we'll manually adjust the selection outline by painting in the quick mask mode. Now notice I've gone ahead and once again saved my selection as a channel down here at the bottom of the channels panel. And I did that just by clicking on this save selection as channel icon. And I went ahead and saved a new version of the file. And that way, if you're working along with me and you accidentally click somewhere with the selection tool to deselect the image, you can always load it up again. Now, in the previous chapter, I introduced you to the load selection command, but as usual, there's a couple of easier ways to work. One is to select the Better Edges channel down here at the bottom of the list, and then click on this first icon, Load Channel as Selection, and then you will get the selection outline back like so, after which point you can go ahead and return to your RGB image. The problem with that approach is that it requires 3 clicks because you have to select the channel, then click the icon, and then return to your image. So you may be wondering, what is the one-click solution? Well, I'll just go ahead and press Control-D or Command-D on the Mac to deselect the image. And then what you want to do is press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac. Notice that produces a little marquee next to my finger-pointing cursor, at which point I'll just go ahead and click on the thumbnail here in order to load up the selection outline. So again, all you have to do is Control or Command-click a thumbnail in order to load it as a selection. All right, now I'm going to press the Q key to switch back to the quick mask mode. And I'll go ahead and zoom in on the image. Now you may recall there's this little lump here that we haven't quite exactly selected. And so I'm going to brush that area in by selecting the brush tool, which you can get by pressing the B key. If I just start painting, however, I'm going to paint away the selection, which is obviously not what I want. So I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. And then I'll swap the foreground and background colors by clicking on the switch icon down here at the bottom of the toolbox, or I'll just press the X key. And now I'll press the left bracket key a few times to reduce the size of my cursor, and I will paint that area in. And it looks like we've got some little areas that need to be painted in here under the bird's chin or whatever it is, in this area as well. And so I'm trying to be very careful here. You don't have to be nearly this careful where this project is concerned, but I just want to show you how to do an absolutely meticulous job. All right, now I'm just going to paint in these details right here. And here's another area that requires some attention. I'm enlarging my brush by pressing the right bracket key, incidentally. And now I'll paint over into here. It's generally better, by the way, when you're selecting an image, to select too little of it than too much, because that way you won't bring over any halos from the previous background. And now what I'm doing is shift clicking, by the way, in order to paint in straight lines. So a click and then a shift click in order to add a straight line of paint. And now I'll go down here. I'm ignoring the wings for now. We're going to take them on in the next movie, incidentally. I'm going to go down to the tail feathers and notice that we have too little selected in these crevices right there. Now, one way it could work is to just go ahead and turn off the quick mask. So notice that it's got its own thumbnail here. And if I click on this little eyeball, it disappears. And then I might go ahead and get my magnetic lasso tool, which is available at the bottom of the lasso tool flyout menu. And I could just go ahead and click along here and then move my cursor up into this little region, click over here, and then start clicking my way down to about here, I would say, and then double click in order to finish off that selection outline. So in other words, you can use the selection tools in the quick mask mode if you like. Now I'll go ahead and turn the quick mask back on. Notice it's selected, and I'm going to fill that area with white by pressing Control Backspace or Command Delete on the Mac. So Control Backspace or Command Delete fills the selection with the background color, which in our case is white, whereas Alt Backspace or Option Delete on the Mac fills the selection with the foreground color, which in our case is black. But we may prefer to just go ahead and brush these other selections in. So I'll press Control-D or Command-D on the Mac to deselect the image. And then I'll go ahead and grab my brush tool once again. And I'll reduce the size of my cursor so that it's very small, like so, just 2 pixels. And now I'll press the X key to swap the foreground and background colors. So the foreground color is now white. And I'll click there and shift click there. And then I'll click right about there and shift click like so, and I'll just paint that little area away. And now we have just one more little crevice here, and I might make my brush just a little bigger for it. Click, and then shift click, and shift click. So clicking and shift clicking can be very useful ways of quickly painting in areas here inside Photoshop. All right, I'm going to wait on these feathers below the claws but I am going to paint that claw in the wrong color, however. So I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. Press the X key to once again make my foreground color black, and then paint in that detail. And then I'll just scroll my way up to the bird's face once again, where everything actually looks pretty darn good. All right, having made those changes, I will once again save my work, but in a different way. And so this time what I'm going to do is grab the Quick Mask item here in the Channels panel, and I'll drag it and drop it onto that little page icon in order to make a duplicate. So notice I now have this item called Quick Mask Copy, and I'm going to go ahead and rename it by double-clicking on its name, and then I'll call this guy, let's say, Manual Adjustments. And then I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change. And now I'll go ahead and exit the Quick Mask mode, either by clicking on this icon down here at the bottom of the toolbox or just by pressing the Q key. At which point you'll see both the selection and the mask, which may sort of freak you out, but that's just because the Manual Adjustments channel is active down here at the bottom of the list. To see the full color image, once again, just click on RGB up here at the top of the list. And that's how you make manual adjustments using the brush tool in the Quick Mask mode here inside Photoshop.